Welcome to Short and to the Point, a podcast from the Comeback in Awful Announcing. Here's your host, Jessica Kleinschmidt.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Short and to the Point on Awful Announcing and the Comeback. Jessica Kleinschmidt here once again. You guys, Philip and I just talked about it. We are coming up on our 1-year birthday, or I guess just our first birthday. 1-year birthday? I'm going to be one of those weird moms who keeps calling 12 months. This podcast is almost 12 months old. My nephew's 8. He's 8. So I'm just going to go by months. I'm not going to do math right now because I don't want to. I'm tired. I'm so excited to think about we have this checkpoint ahead of us, 1 year, which is a good time of reflection because of all the different episodes we've done. And we're still putting them out and we keep continuing amazing conversations. Philip, for my cake that you will definitely be sending, I would love some cream cheese frosting. Please don't forget that. So we have an exciting episode upon us. Carolina Tar Heel legend Joel Berry joins us. He's a national champion, of course, but having the name or the definition of Tar Heel legend attached to him, we go over that. It's just so interesting because you're kind of put on this pedestal, and he not only proved himself, but stepped up in those certain situations. He's doing work with the ACC Network now. I picked his brain about his career, retirement, just who he is as a person. And it's such a fascinating conversation because we go over so many subjects. Once again, we get a little deep, and I think that's very important because it teaches me things. And everything is bigger than basketball. Everything is bigger than sports. But we, of course, go back to the sporting aspect of it all and so much more. So here's my chat with Joel Berry. Well, Joel is here decked out in a beautiful cherry shirt. We're so excited to have you. And it's interesting when, I've listened to your podcast, but beyond that, when people describe you, they call you a Carolina basketball legend. Using the term legend, that's a pretty awesome definition. So when you hear that being defined as you, how does that make you feel?
Yeah, it's pretty, it's a blessing, I will say, just because you think about all the people that have come through Carolina, and the the presence in what you're in and what you're doing and what university you're at. I think it just all goes into it. I didn't think I would have that title going into Carolina. I was just a boy from Florida, just taking advantage of an opportunity. And I always wanted to win a national championship. That was a goal of mine. And I wanted to do that before I left, and, was able to do that. But I also have my jersey in the rafters. So it's just like, it was things I never thought would happen. But I put in the time and I put in the work. And now every time I get to walk in that arena, I get to see those two banners, which is pretty special. So it is a blessing to have that label.
Yeah. And you even said that because during your high school time, you said, obviously, a national championship. I feel like it's one of those things you don't have to say it. You want to get that. But you specifically said after you made your commit, I want to see my name up in the rafters. And that came to fruition too. So a lot of the things you said, you're number 2, I think you mentioned recently, like now you have 2 kids and that kind of came out. So all of the things you ultimately wanted, for the most part, I'm sure there's other things that those came true for you.
Yeah. My dad believed in the law of attraction, and, just not, it's putting stuff out there in the universe, but it's giving yourself a direction that you want to go in and what you want to accomplish. And I think that's the biggest thing about when you think about law of attraction, just having something in mind that you want to attract, and that you want to accomplish. And that's what I did. The first time I stepped foot in the Dean Dome, and it's for anyone. The initial thing that you do is you look right up and you look up in the rafters. Mm-hmm. And that's something that no matter who you are, that's the first thing you do, because there's so much excellence up there. There's so much that has been accomplished up there. And I told myself I wanted a national championship, but for selfish reasons, I was like, I want to be on that side. And that's what was, that was part of what I wanted to do. And every day that I stepped foot in that gym and I was working and I was putting up shots, and sweating and blood, blood, sweat, and tears, I kept those two things in mind, and that is what drove me to be the best that I could be. So part of the law of attraction is just knowing what you want and being able to approach it from that standpoint each and every day.
I caught you at the perfect time. I've been hardcore into the law of attraction lately, and I'm so glad that you mentioned being selfish, because it's so not like you as a teammate, and we'll get into that later on. But when you were looking up at the rafters before your name was up there, I don't know if this is an obvious question. Were there names that you were drawn to? I have a feeling there's one up there, but is there a couple that really you would say, I can't believe I might one day be in the same realm as X, Y, and Z?
Well, obviously Michael Jordan is up there, but I look at like Antoine Jameson, Ty Lawson, Raymond Felton, like those guys are up there. And funny story is when we went to Hawaii for the Maui Invitational, those same guys that I looked up to were up on the MVP for that tournament. And I still remember to this day, I was sitting there. I used to get stretched by my trainer. And I sat there and I was just staring at that MVP board. And I said to myself, before, when we leave this tournament, I will be MVP, because those are the guys that I looked up to. And I was like, if that's the company that I want to be in, I got to be up there. And I just kept that in mind the whole tournament. And we end up winning the tournament and I won MVP. So it's just crazy how just having something that you want to do and you want to accomplish, having that in mind as you approach everything that you do. So those are the guys that I saw up there in the rafters. Those are the guys that I saw in the MVP. And now I get to stand in the company with those guys. So those are the two people that I wanted to that I looked up to. And I end up accomplishing those same things.
Amazing. And tell me a little bit about the Tar Heel way, because we'll go over the loss to Alabama in a little bit, but I loved the way that the guys were so passionate and were so fulfilled by this organization and just the basketball organization in and of itself. And you said something that really stood out to me. The name on the front, if you can take care of the name on the front, the name on the back will be ultimately taken care of as well. And I feel like it's so much bigger than what happens on the court. So when you first put that Tar Heel uniform on to go out and play in a game, what did that feel like?
Yeah, that's what when I went on my visit, I took only one official visit, which is kind of rare being a 5-star recruit, McDonald's All-American. Very rare to do that. Now you see the guys coming on with the hats and taking off the shirts and whatnot.
It's like a gender reveal almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Perfect example.
Yes.
I did it differently. I took one and I just said, you know what? This school is for me. And what my dad told me on that visit was that you're not only just joining a basketball program, you are joining a fraternity, fraternity of brothers from, the guys who trailblazed and who were there before us. You're entering that fraternity. And so my dad always thought about things not from just what we see and going to play basketball. You're looking at people who are in high places in all over the place, whether it be basketball or whether it just be, someone that's a common person walking on the street that graduated from Carolina. We all have a connection. So the brother, that fraternity, the brotherhood goes farther than just, what the basketball players. It's the entire school. It's everyone that represents the University of North Carolina. And I just got back from the Final Four and I saw my brothers, John Henson and Danny Green out there. No matter where we are, we know we see each other, we hug each other, and we let each other know, hey, we'll see you back in Chapel Hill this summer. That's what it is. That family, that's what Carolina is.
And it's so interesting because as a high schooler, I mean, you were very mature too, and we'll get into that in a little bit, but was there pressure there? Because you mentioned it's more than just basketball. And you could argue with me as a young high school player where it's just basketball. I wouldn't bat an eye thinking you would have any other thoughts. So when your dad's talking about a fraternity, it's bigger than what's going on in the court. Was there pressure there?
That position being at that this type of university, prestigious university, there is a lot of pressure. There's a responsibility to it. You have to walk differently. Your actions have to be different because you represent not only the basketball program, but you represent the school. And when you think about Carolina, people think about Carolina basketball. So everywhere I go, I sort of have a very, a on my shirt, even though it doesn't say it, I have University of North Carolina written all over me, and that's to this day. So I am a representative of not just the program, but the whole entire school. And that's a responsibility because you have to sacrifice what you would like to do. You have to remember that you are in the spotlight and that everything that you do, it not only represents what's on the front, or not on the back, but it represents what's on the front. So there's a responsibility with that.
And you talk about your dad a lot. He obviously is a pretty big influence on you. What influence does he have on you?
Just being an all-around person. My parents are very, very high on, getting to know other people, getting to know people that look different than you, and not being afraid to be in that environment. And that was the way that they they parented me. The one thing my parents always did was, every time I went into the locker room, there was something where, okay, I let all those emotions out. Whatever happened in the game, I let it out in the locker room. But when I step outside of that locker room, I am a person that little kids look up to. People want to get to know. People want to shake my hand. I can't allow what I did on the court to have an impact on someone having the ability in that one-time moment to have a time where they look back on their life and say, I got to meet that guy. Yeah. I can't allow those emotions to be that. So my parents, or have an influence on that. So my parents, no matter what, they always thought about my character more than basketball. And it has benefited me in what I am doing right now in every single thing that I do. And I hear stories every single day of people who say to me, you know what, you met a person that I know, and they said that was the best time in their life because you took the time to shake their hand and talk to them and speak to them in a way that they were the most interesting person in that moment.
I've met so many athletes, and sometimes I couldn't tell you what was on their basketball reference page, baseball reference page. I will tell you exactly how they made me feel. I'll tell you how
exactly.
And that's why I think people continue to get jobs. I don't care what certain aspects happen in numbers, but I love that. And it's cool because, and I have a quote from Jason Valerie about you, and this was during your time in high school. Referring to you, he said he doesn't worry about how many points he scores. He doesn't worry about how many tweets he gets or how many shout outs. He is only worried about the team basketball and how we are going to win. This was about you during high school. And if you looked at your scouting reports, you were very selfless. They talked about how you were able to pass the ball to your teammates. That's a very mature quality in a high school basketball player. That's rare.
Yeah, and my high school coaches were the best. I love those guys. I got a chance to, be coached by Jeff Turner, who played in the league as well. I had weekly meetings with one of our assistants. His name was Dustin Bolin, and along with Coach Valerie. Those guys helped build what my parents had instilled in me, and it was getting to know my teammates. Knowing that I had to have the trust and the confidence from my teammates if we wanted to win state championships. And it was just a way of life to me. It's just like one of those things where that's just how I operated every single day. Like, I didn't care about my status. I didn't care who I was. I like being around people. I'm a goofy guy. And I wanted to be the guy that I didn't want to walk in the locker room. My teammates felt like they couldn't know who I was, or who I am. I just wanted to be a normal person. And that's why I, each and every day, I was able to be who I was. And it was, I'm thankful for the coaches helping me to make sure that I kept that in mind, that my teammates and the people around me are what's important, and my character was the most important thing.
And they let you be yourself, like doing round offs. I see you do cartwheels on the. That's you. I think
I'm doing the cartwheels. I'm dancing. Like that's just who I am.
and that's cool too, because I would see clips and like Roy Williams would come to your games. This is obviously after you committed, and you could see the fans would just look at you and knew that there was something special. And I could just watch you, and you could tell you weren't worried about the pressure. And it could be because you committed, you knew where you were going, but the fans would look at you and say, this guy's something special. And you could just see it in their eyes. And there was a hot ticket to watch your games too. Was that the case back then?
Yeah, it was. What's so great about it is that I think about, like, I was being recruited, but I had my classmates that, I'm in class with every single day. They wouldn't even talk about me. They would talk about how cool is it that Coach Williams came to our school and was sitting in the stands that we sit in. And like Billy Donovan and all of these high major schools coming to our school, like that's what they thought was cool. And I was like, that's what was awesome. I didn't care, like that what I did, it would have taken care of itself, and it did. But it was so cool for the classmates, the people that I sat down with every single day outside of my uniform, that were so moved by those coaches coming and watching our games. I think that was the coolest thing about going through my recruitment process, is my classmates being able to feel the presence of those guys coming to the game.
You immediately confirmed everything I thought about you being selfless. You didn't make that about yourself. You're like, hey, everybody else gets to experience that. Oprah talks about that all the time. In order to be successful and appreciate all the wealth, you have to share it with others. And I think that that's so beautiful.
That's very true. Like, we get a chance to, like, in our platform, as I was talking about that responsibility earlier, we have a chance to make an impact on other people's lives. And that is the most important thing, because we're going to be fine. I am going to be fine. My path is going to be just fine. What God has ordained for me, that no one can take that away from me. No one can tamper with that. But we have a chance to have impacts on other people who don't have the chance to be in these type of moments. And I think that's the greatest thing that we can do in our positions, is to get people to kind of feel what we feel each and every day, because a lot of people just don't have those opportunities.
And how do you kind of get rid of the noise when it comes to being recruited? There are scouting reports, of course. That means there's a pros list and there's a cons list. Your cons list was stuff that you already knew. Perhaps your size wasn't what a lot of people in the league were looking at, and you embraced that as well, and that was on the con list. How do you kind of factor that into it and ignore it, or were you good about ignoring it?
Yeah, I was good about ignoring it. Basketball is just something that I did, and it didn't define me. But it was my drive that got me to where I was. I didn't care about, like, when I stepped on the court, I didn't care about who was taller than me. I didn't care about who was more athletic than me. I just wanted to compete, and I knew my competitiveness would take care of it. And I just, I'm a platform for people who are small and who get looked over. That doesn't matter. It's, your competitiveness will come out and it will show. And that's what got me to where I was able to get. You know what? Could I be bitter about playing in the league or not playing in the league? Yeah, I can. But I know that my path is unique to me. And I know that what I've done and what I've accomplished, no one can take that away from me. And what I am doing now in the media is part of my path. It's part of what I get to do now. And it's just something that has shaped me into the person that I am today, which I got a wife, I got kids. I'm able to talk about basketball. Like that's what's most important. 10 years from now, no matter how long you are in the league, it has an expiration date. My expiration date was a little bit shorter. But you know what? I got a chance, and now I get to do stuff like this. I get to go on podcasts and talk. I mean, I'm living the good life still. So
you are, and it's cool because you almost make it sound, this is just from me listening. You want to get the league. That's the ultimate goal. You want to make it to the NBA, and that didn't happen. You played in the G League. You played overseas. How do you not get, you said you could easily get bitter. What was the mental game that you had to play in order to not let that take over for you, knowing you didn't get quite to your goal before you retired?
Yeah, I will say that it's not easy from that moment of feeling like, okay, I have to make this transition. It's not easy at all. It took me at least a year and a half, 2 years to kind of find myself, because I was just on a schedule. And when I was little, I was like, I want to play in the NBA. That's something that I always had on my mind. But our plans sometimes don't go the way that we want it to go. But I knew that I had done enough, and my parents did a great job of making me well-rounded to where basketball wasn't just, I just wasn't all basketball. I am a human being that can do other things. And my parents just raised me that way. And I always thought that way, that basketball is something that I did. I took advantage of that little round object, and it took me all over the world. And now I am transitioning to something that's a little bit different. But the one thing that I wanted to do with basketball, I wanted to walk away on my own terms. I didn't want to have to walk away saying, oh, they didn't let me do this. I didn't get a chance to do that. No, I walked away still loving that little round thing. And I still do to this day. But I walked away on my own terms.
And that's a rarity too, because sometimes we have injury, we have to deal with that. And like, that's a whole thing. And you said you felt like you did enough, but it's like kind of an interesting question to ask. You felt like you did enough, but how did you come to that mentality, and how did the conversation go with the people closest to you? Because you do have such a strong support system, and you have to tell them like, hey, it's retirement time.
Yeah. I feel like I've been talking about my dad the whole time, but
we love dad. Yes.
I love dad. And, my mom was there too, but this is why having a father and, also having a mom, but having a father in the home is so, so important. And why I am so thankful now that I am a father, and I will show up the same way. But my dad I called my dad, and I was in training camp, summer league, getting ready to go out to Vegas with the Charlotte Hornets. And I kind of just felt like something was off. And I went back to my roots. My dad and I have 2-hour conversations. I called my dad, and I was like, I don't feel right. And he was like, well, is that something that you really want to do? And I was like, I don't know. And he was like, well, the fact that you're questioning that is a sign that this might not be something that you want to do. And he was like, and he told me in every single conversation, Jay is my nickname, because if my mom would call us in the household, both of us would look, since I'm the second. So I had to, he calls me Jay. He's like, Jay, man, if you don't want to do something, remember what I've always told you, you've done enough. And so I hung up the phone. I talked with my wife, and I told her, I said, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. And she said, well, if you don't want to do it, I 100% support you.
Wow.
I think those conversations right there solidified me stepping on and moving away. And it's so funny. We as humans, we conjure up in our mind all these hypothetical situations of what this will look like, what that will look like. And it kind of makes us not want to do anything. I said, I'm going to just step out on faith. And I stepped out on faith, and I called my agent, and I said, I'm done. I'm not going to summer league. I'm hanging it up, and I'm going to go a different direction. And it's funny because everything has worked out just fine. I'm living my best life, as I said earlier. Would I have thought that this is what I would be doing before? No, because I thought it was over with. But my life has gotten so much better. And it's thankful for that conversation with my father and the support that I got from my wife during this time.
Obsessed with that. But you said you were kind of shocked that your life went in this direction as far as broadcasting. Was that a possibility for you? Was it something you were interested in during your career?
So it wasn't, I didn't think I would be doing it. But I know my earlier in high school, my dad hooked me up with one of his good friends who was in broadcasting.
Mm-hmm.
And just to prepare myself for what I would do at North Carolina. And then at North Carolina, we had someone that was close to our team that would help us in our interviews.
Oh, cool.
And would give us feedback. And so once I was in the latter half of my career, my short career, only 3 years, for playing professionally, I had got in contact from the ACC Network about this opportunity. And I was like, well, I'm still making basketball work out. And then once I got done, I was like, all right, I think I want to do it. So I reached out, did my audition, and now I'm here. And I'm so happy that I had that conversation prior to finishing up, just because now it's put me in this position. But I didn't think I would be going, this direction, but it worked out for me. I knew I was well-spoken, still had the Southern twang, which I love.
I love it too.
But yeah, I just, I'm so happy I went in this direction and that I got that phone call during my career.
And it's interesting because you started your collegiate career at such a unique time when it came to social media and different kind of outpour for coverage. What were your surprises from the time that you got your start, where I would say like social media was happening and they were able to tweet out your stuff, and then now you're in the thick of it? What surprised you from the time that you were part of the coverage as far as being the subject and now being a part of the actual coverage itself?
Yeah, well, I wish, like TikTok and Instagram was a little bit more prevalent when I first started. I mean, I'm still young, but like Instagram and stuff, it was just starting when I got into college.
Yeah.
But I didn't have TikTok. If I would have had like 2 million views because I was dancing all on Twitter and
oh my gosh, yeah,
Instagram. So I wish that was, it was there in my time. But, I just think now with the coverage and how things are, man, it's tough because like you see all of that stuff out there. These kids that are playing, they have social media. They see everything that is being written about them. And it's something that's hard to deal with. That's why in my take, I don't ever try to downplay what a kid has, what they're doing or spin it in a negative light. I always put it in a way that's very sensitive to how, if this kid saw what I said, how would he feel?
Mm-hmm.
Is it more of, making him look bad and kind of, taking away that confidence? Or is it more of doing it in a positive light where it's like, okay, you know what? He kept it real. I am motivated now. I think we see a lot of stuff out there that's more of someone trying to get clickbaits instead of realizing like you're dealing with another human being. What if I always use it in a way like, what if in our jobs we showed up every single day and our manager or whatever pulls us in a room and just gives it to us every single day,
but more public.
But more public.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like we don't always show up, 100% every single day.
Yeah.
I don't show up 100%. But these kids, they have a bad game. Everyone's killing them on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. Like imagine someone doing that in your job. I always put it in that light, in that perspective, because that's what it's like. Waking up each and every day, if you're not 100%, and people showing up and just degrading you in what you're doing. I think that's the one thing that people have to be cognizant about when they're getting on there and typing on Twitter or Instagram about those things, because you're dealing with a human.
If one more person who works a 9 to 5 tells me to grow a thick skin, I'm going to lose it. I am going to lose it, Joel. I just can't. Like maybe just like ignore it. Oh, okay. I didn't even think about that. That's such a good idea. I'll stop. I will stop. It drives me nuts. And
yeah.
And I will admit it, they do put athletes up on a pedestal to a certain extent. I totally agree. They are freak athletes. They do a lot of things we cannot do. But and I feel like it's different, especially with collegiate athletes. They're still kids at the end of the day. So I'm right there with you. And let's talk a little bit more this season with the Tar Heels. And I have this affinity for Cormac, and I just love the way that he presents himself. In an interview with The Athletic after the loss, he said that one really hurts. He whispered to himself, and it'll hurt for the rest of our lives. And to know just from everything you've told me about being a member of that basketball team, and he stood up for his teammates too. And it was kind of cool that you told me the message about the clickbait, where he was kind of making sure that didn't happen heading into that game, saying, I know you guys are going to write some stuff, but I want to make sure that you guys know we wouldn't be here without my teammates. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what went wrong this season, but why is there still, hope? Because it's a really good, solid group of guys.
Yeah, it's it's tough because I know everyone would love to have Cormac Ryan for another year. What he brought to Carolina, what he brought to this to the university, he represented it well. And when you talk about the transfer portal, the pros and the cons, he represents all of why the transfer portal is so amazing. To be able to pull someone in for a year and have such a quick, but people will remember that for a long time because of what he's done for the university. But this team, they pulled the pieces together. They went out in the portal and got two really good guys, and Cormac himself and Harrison Ingram, and RJ Davis and Armando led this team with, what happened 2 years ago, being able to make the national championship, and they all wanted to get back to that point. Cormac, wanted to be able to compete for a national championship, and they did, and they were so close to making it. In that last game, I think it really shows, you look online and you hear the cliche word or saying of every play matters. And people are kind of write it off, but it's so true, because if you look at the end of that game, it was like one or two plays that could have made the difference in them being in Alabama's shoes in the Final Four going against UConn. That could have been them. But it really does. It really is about just every play matters. But this team played phenomenal throughout the year, and I'm 100% on Cormac's side in the fact that they wouldn't have been in that spot without what RJ Davis had done this year. Not being on any all leagues at the beginning of the year, it ended up being ACC Player of the Year, which was phenomenal. This team, they were amazing, but they wouldn't have been in that moment without him. I wanted to see them go on. I think they had all the ins and outs and a recipe to win the national championship. But it's unfortunate that the luck wasn't on their side in the NCAA tournament.
Why do we forget about what happens leading up to that moment? And I get it. All we think about is the fact that they didn't make it all the way. And for Cormac to have to say, we're here because of him. Why do we forget about those moments? Because those are ultimately imperative to get there.
You're right. I wish I had those answers. But I will say, I think, a lot of it is just because, and I understand it now being on my side of things, we're just wondering what's going on in the athlete's head. Obviously, we know the athlete doesn't come out there and say, "Hey, I'm gonna have my worst game today." That's not on their mind. So I can understand, they're just trying to get in the minds of the athletes. But I think that's what makes the greatest stories sometimes, is when we're asking these really hard questions that kind of seems like we lose perspective on what is going on and what happened. That was a moment for Cormac to step up in that moment and look like we're sitting here talking about it. Those are the greatest stories. Sometimes the greatest stories come out of times where it's hard to sometimes, accept the fact that this question is being asked or this moment has happened. But look what it did. It really solidified what RJ Davis did for the year. Obviously, his accolades solidified it, but one of his teammates stepped up in that moment and took his back and helped everyone remember that this is why we were here. RJ was part of this and why we got here. So I can understand, but I just think it made for such a great moment for a guy to step up and really, really, step up for his teammate in that moment.
I loved it. It gave me chills. And
Yeah,
just
me
on that,
too.
yeah. And on that note, have you noticed collegiate athletes, especially when they have a platform and they play for a team that does get a lot of coverage, they're a little bit more outspoken in recent years. And I don't remember that being the case earlier on in my career. Why is that beneficial?
It's beneficial because at times it can look like, that sometimes your like teammates don't get involved, or they're just like, they seem like they're just teammates and not really like family. And so I think having guys being able to speak out on the behalf of their teammates, it just really shows the bond and what's going on behind closed doors. Like, my parents always wanted me to be a part of a team because it's something that's so special, and that you don't ever get a chance to have that feeling in anything else that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like a team dynamic is so beautiful, even in the ugly, because we all come from different backgrounds. And like, I'm gonna get really deep into it, especially nowadays where everyone wants to see black and white. Everything seems like we want to be unified, but people talk about black people and white people. If you really want to get deep into that moment, that is a white person stepping up for a black person.
Mm-hmm.
There is so many things in basketball and team sports where you have so many guys coming from different backgrounds, and you have to come together for this one common goal. I think that's what's so beautiful, is that you have ugliness, you have the beauty, you have all of these different dynamics of people coming together and competing for one common goal. So for Cormac Ryan to step up in that moment and say that about his teammate, that's the family dynamic. That's the team dynamic. And I think that's what was so beautiful about that moment. And that might have been overlooked in that moment about the white and black, but that's what team is about. Different backgrounds coming together for one common goal.
Why is it important for you to make sure that message is spoken about? Because I can't relate, obviously. So when you talk about the message and you say it's him sticking up for a black man, why is that an important message for you to talk about?
It's important because that's a hot topic today. Mm-hmm. We're so quick to put out the negative that we don't see the positive in and we're not quick to put that out there. And the reason why I point it out is because I was impacted. I went from middle school to high school, and my parents put me in that environment of predominantly white private school, because my parents told me it's not about color, it's about the people that you're around. And they wanted me to feel comfortable being around other people that look different than me. Mm. And to this day, my best friends are white guys, and I still talk to them to this day. And that is so important to talk about, because we hear about all the negativity with whites and blacks, but we rarely ever hear about it being the opposite way. Mm. And my parents, that was part of them wanting to for me to be well-rounded. So I think that's why it's so important for that message to be put out there, that it's not about the skin color. It's just about getting to know the person that's sitting across from you. And like you and I right now, having these conversations and being able to get to know one another. That's what it's about. And that will take down the barrier from seeing it as white and black.
Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional.
It's all good.
No, but how do I flip the narrative? And I don't want to flip a narrative where I'm being irresponsible or naive about it. I can be very privileged in my everyday. I admit that. I feel like even as a woman in my industry, I don't feel like I'm heard enough either. So how do I make it to where I'm flipping the narrative without making it so like pick me?
But see, that's the thing is, and that's the beauty in it, is that you do recognize and accept that you did come from privilege. That's fine. That's not a problem. And people think that it's a problem that you come from that environment. It's not. But at the same time, you have this dynamic that you don't feel like you're heard enough.
Mm-hmm.
So what I tell people is that we all have our differences. And I talk to people who are white, who have come from hard backgrounds. But the thing is we have to take down the barrier and sit down and get to know people. Like that's how I was able to know the people that I went into my situation thinking that like I had to be in a shell when I went into my high school. But once I sat down and I got to know these people, I realized like they have problems in their own right. We all have our own problems.
Yeah.
But it's about the way that you approach the situation. But it's also about sitting down and having conversations with people. And once you realize like, hey, that's just another person and they have problems too, you're like, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful because we all have our own things that make us who we are.
Yeah. And I feel like, and I'm glad you mentioned like everything doesn't have to be black or white. Like I'm such a gray thinker that I wish I was more like, I have to be this and that. I wish sometimes I could just be yes or no or A and B, but my mind just goes to all these crazy places. And I like being overthinker hurts me sometimes, but with these podcasts, I love leaving like learning something or having a beautiful, bigger view on things because you're right. We're all kind of dealing with stuff more than just kind of, we are all dealing with stuff. And I feel like it's something we don't think about. Covering sports is just like, and I've talked about it before. We really just want to shut up and dribble mentality, and that's not okay. and I work with people who have that mentality when I'm covering a sport, and it drives me absolutely insane. And I just can't. We're going to shift gears so I can stop crying. But John Calipari reportedly accepted a 5-year deal to be the head coach at Arkansas, and I did some digging. And he said when he was going up against you and your team once, I don't know if you were out because of an injury. I'm assuming it was an injury, but he said that it greatly reduced the value of watching film because you were not there. You were not playing. So it sounded like he got a little bit of ease because he didn't have to recruit as intensely because you weren't there. Obviously, you have big names that have supported you with Roy Williams, but when you have a guy like Calipari who gets the praise, gives you some praise, a guy of that magnitude, how does that make you feel?
Yeah, that's, that makes me feel awesome. It just shows the value that I had to my team. When we think about like team dynamic and a guy being out, sometimes it's not even the fact that like I could be on the court and maybe I'm not scoring, but the presence of me just being on the court has an impact on my teammates, So even if I'm not scoring, just me being there helps. But I also would, I wish I would have changed my recruiting so that I could meet some of these coaches, through my recruiting. And so I wish I would have went on some of these visits to meet a guy like John Calipari. But I honestly think it might have been I was hurt leading up to that game. So there were a couple of games I wasn't in the game. So they couldn't. And I just showed up on game time and said, I'm playing. So I think that
you sneaky little devil.
I'm sneaky like that, I'm sneaky. And then we end up playing one of the greatest games in college basketball. It was in Las Vegas. Rarely do you see teams scoring over 100 points, both teams.
Yeah.
And the score was like somewhere like 105 to like 102. Very high scoring, fast paced game. But I kind of had an impact in that game because I guess I was a little sneaky and they didn't know what was coming. So greatest game, but to have another coach of that caliber speak about you in that way, it doesn't matter who you are. It's always a blessing to be able to have someone to speak on your behalf that way.
And he said this on sports talk radio, and when you go on sports talk radio, you don't hold back. It's just a different vibe. And that kind of brought up another question for me because, obviously with college basketball, you're not seeing these crazy high scoring games as you would in NBA, but there's a beauty to that. And I love when I have a conversation with somebody and they're either very much, I absolutely hate NBA and I hate NFL, but I will stop what I'm doing to watch a college football game and a college basketball game. Besides the obvious stuff, when you talk about monetary value, of course, why should we invest more of our time in collegiate games or collegiate, matchups, as opposed to the professional at the highest level?
Yeah, I just think college college sports is like a connection almost. Like people have gone to college. Not everyone has played on the professional level. So like you understand as a person how hard it is to be a college kid. You understand, or not hard, but the challenges of being a college kid. You were able to be on campus at whatever university you went to. So like I think there's a distance from professionals to, just a common person, because a lot of people, like I said, just didn't play on that level. But you know what it's like being in college, and we all are repping our schools. I'm not, what university did you go to?
I'm actually a college dropout. I dropped out of Truckee Meadows. Yeah, and I used to be insecure about it, but now I don't have, I dropped out of Truckee Meadows Community College in Reno, Nevada. So that's where I dropped out from.
Yeah, but
that's okay.
You're here. You're still good.
Here.
You're living your best life. So
yeah,
but a lot of folks just they graduate from their university, so they have a connection from it. And I think that's why we have to continue to invest more in college sports. But the one thing, as far I'm sure we'll probably get in this, but NIL, the biggest thing and why I want to see kids get paid is because someone like me, I didn't have a huge professional career, but I could have capitalized off of my college career. There are a lot of guys in my position that will not have anything to do with college or professional basketball, whatever, but they can maximize their college career. So I think that's why even more we should put money into NIL in the collective, because these people can change their lives here in the college level and not have to wait to get to the professional level, which a lot of people don't make it to that level.
Agree. I think it's just night and day from when I, first started. And I think it's so cool. I was a little torn at first, and now I'm definitely embracing it. So when it comes to the ACC, they're dealing with some realignment stuff. It feels like every conference really is these days. But there are teams in the conference reportedly that want out. And one in particular, I believe Florida State recruited you at one point. But they gave you an offer. But what are your thoughts on some of these realignments, and not just the ACC, but a more broader term, just overall in all these college conferences?
Yeah, it's so many moving pieces. I mean, we all know one obvious thing it's about the money.
What?
Right? So surprise. It's about the money, it's about the TV deals, the things that people really don't even care about, but the conferences do. Yeah. And all of the folks who are making those decisions. But I think, like with everything, it has its pros and it has its cons, but it's just like a different time now. And you just think about like ACC basketball. Since I'm in it, I live it, I breathe it. What's going to happen with North Carolina and Duke? Like the rivalry. People have been talking about the rivalry for so long. A lot of these rivalries that we've talked about that have etched themselves in being, the rivalry that we pay attention to. What about those rivalries that are so prevalent in our sport? Those will be gone. You think about the ACC, you think about North Carolina, you think about Duke, you think about some of these other teams. Like that dynamic is going to be gone. And then you talk about like the conversation of teams getting into the NCAA tournament. How do we make sure that the mid majors are still up there? Yeah. It just makes things so complicated when you talk about there possibly being 3 big or 2 big conferences with with the biggest names in the industry. So I just think it's tough. But it's something that, that we just have to embrace because it's new times now. I don't think we should try to not embrace it. I think we should embrace it and see where it goes. But this is really all about the money. But I think the one thing that people have to keep in mind, and I know it's hard, but they have to keep in mind that it's not about your own agenda. It's about putting the student athletes in the best situations to succeed. And if that does mean going into a different conference, by all means, go ahead and do it. But I think that still needs to be at the forefront of all the decisions that are being made and not the money aspect of it.
I love that, because I was going to ask you about Cameron Brink and how she was very much saying, I don't want to, as far as the ACC alignment, she said, I don't want to travel across the world, basically, or across the nation for some of these things. And I don't want to say you're agreeing with her. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but she wasn't making it about money necessarily. I mean, she wants to declare for the draft, but it's a personal thing for her, because when you make these decisions because maybe it's easier for your parents to go on the West Coast or what have you. And she just, doesn't want to travel across the country. She's embracing, like, Stanford's no joke. She's embracing that, and she's making it about herself, which I think is very important.
Yeah. And her situation is a little bit different. Not everyone's going to a Stanford, so I can, I can understand.
I literally told you I dropped out of a community college in Reno, Nevada. I totally, yes. I can imagine Stanford is no joke. I couldn't handle journalism 101. I get it.
So yeah, we understand that dynamic of it.
Yeah.
So, she's her own person. She makes that decision. If that's what she feels is keeping her from feeling like she can put her best foot forward, then by all means, that's she has her right to do that. But I there's some validity into it though, because like we hear football is a little bit different because they practice throughout the week and they travel on Saturday.
Yeah.
So it's and some have Thursday games, it's a little bit different, but with basketball, you have to think like you're obligated to go to class, but you're also, if you have a West Coast trip, that makes it tough to be in class. So I can understand it. And that's why I'm still like NIL more, because now that's an added dynamic to, you got to go to class, but you still have to show up and be the best athlete that you can be, because let's be honest, why are you there? You're there because you are an athlete. You're a 5-star, 4-star recruit, and you have to show up on the court, and that's your first job, to be honest, if we're keeping it real here, because without that, you wouldn't even be at the university. So I can understand where she's coming from. That's something that you have to think about. And that's why I said we have to make sure that we're keeping the athletes first and not being detrimental to what and why they're there, just because the university wants to make some more money, or the conference wants to make more money, or the TV deals want more money. That they're going to make money, but let's make sure that the athletes are being the ones who are at the forefront of all of this movement.
I agree. Last one before I let you go. Obviously, being from Florida, this is kind of an interesting thing to read about you. Let me rephrase this. Being from Florida, you ultimately would end up a UNC legend, as we declared, an illustrious career with the college. But you didn't understand the magnitude of the UNC Duke rivalry at the very beginning until, I would assume, we're in the middle of it. So elaborate a little bit more on that, because you admitted you knew there was a rivalry. You just didn't realize the magnitude of it.
Yeah, I didn't know. I was a Florida, like you said, I was a Florida boy growing up. Pretty wild that I made it out of Florida not playing football, because it's a football state. But I watched Carolina on TV. That's what attracted me, because of the the widespread coverage that they had. They were playing on ESPN every night, and I would watch SportsCenter every single day. So I saw Carolina. That's what intrigued me. And when I said, Mom, I want to go play for the University of North Carolina. And again, looping back, law of attraction. That's what I wanted. So when I got there, I was like, I knew about the rivalry, but it's a little bit different about knowing about the rivalry and actually being in it. It's like having knowledge, but knowledge and wisdom are a little bit different. Like that's how it was. So the first time, like I would just remember being on campus and like you can tell that it was the Carolina Duke week. The coaches, even though they come out and say, no, it's just a regular week. No, it wasn't. Our coaches were so on edge during the week. I mean, you could tell that it was the rivalry week, but like even going to class, like you could feel like kind of like that pressure from your classmates of like, look, the one thing people before me talked about was rushing Franklin Street. I want to be able to do that. So Joel, make sure you're on your P's and Q's tonight. Like you can feel it. And then the first time I stepped foot in Cameron, I just like my eyes were so wide. And just like being in there and how the stadium was rocking. I mean, just hearing from the fans, they're like, we don't care about the rest of your season. We care about these 2 games. Make sure you win those. Obviously, they care about the rest of the season, but they're like, well, you got to win those 2 for sure. Because you just think about like people walk into their offices every day. They're working with people who are Duke grads. People are working with Carolina grads. They want to be able to go in and kind of crap talk, So it's just I didn't realize all that, and when I got there, I quickly understood. Yeah, it's something.
You found out.
I found out the hard way, and I had some of my classmates say some things to me walking into my my dorm that weren't pretty nice to me, but it's just that's what it's about.
Yeah, that's good. No, because it was kind of interesting because like same thing. Like I definitely know there's a rivalry there, but I would imagine being in the thick of it, it's just a different vibe and all of that. But
it really is like people take it personally. Like I say it over and over again, but people will like be in traffic and they'll see the little sticker on the back of their car that is the enemy, and they wouldn't even let people over. So that's why in Charlotte I don't put my North Carolina sticker on my car. I don't have time for that. I don't need road rage.
Oh my gosh. It's weird. Like if somebody doesn't let me in, my whole day's ruined. I'm like, they really hate me. And I like let it ruin my day. I get it. Right.
It does. It does. It hurts. It's like this person doesn't realize like this is the most important thing right now. I need to get over it and they're not allowing me.
Like we already deal with so much in life. Having to merge on the freeway is just adding stress. Like it's the one thing I think we would all be better people if we knew how to merge. I swear we would be so much better off in life if we knew how to merge, which is why I'm always on edge. Like I can't do it. I know the person next to me can't. What are we doing? I get it. It's hard.
It's a hard life, right?
You're the absolute best. Thanks so much for stopping by.
Yes. Thanks for having me.
So that was Joel Berry. What a fun conversation. Anything you could pretty much imagine talking about with him, we talked about, and same thing. We could have talked to him for years, way more hours about law of attraction or just more in-depth stuff that I've been tapping into. And like I said, we did get pretty deep and did stuff that is more than just basketball. And I'm so appreciative of his time. And so make sure you're following everything on the Comeback and Awful Announcing. Thanks for stopping by Short and to the Point, and we'll see you next time.
Want even more short and to the point? Follow Jessica at Kleinschmidt JD and head over to thecomeback.com and awfulannouncing.com.